ongoing problem in the United States, and I'm sure that we're not alone in this, but I know that this is true. And it is that politicians tend to take politics as a job, a job. They do not look at it as service to the people. They do not look at it as something that they ought to do for a limited time and then stop. And the result is, one of the results anyway, is that politicians, by and large, will say what they think people want to hear, and I don't care who they are. That's something that they're pretty much going to do. So you should expect that when politicians use statistical data, numbers of any kind, they're going to use things that support what they think is going to keep them around. That's true for wage increases, which is what I want to talk about today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Sunday, the 17th of April of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there, on kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on Minds, minds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group primarily there, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be seeing or hearing me today. Again, the subject for today is wage increases, and I'm going to go through my notes really quick to talk about that subject. It's already true that many numbers presented by the government, particularly the U.S. national folks, are not valid from the outset. I've pointed this out in past when talking about unemployment claims. What people claim where that's concerned is not the same as what is essentially their legitimate need. I don't think most folks will bother to claim when they've exhausted their benefits, as by way of example. They won't do that. That being the case, there are almost certainly folks out there who are unemployed but not claiming unemployment benefits. There are likely also underemployed folks who either are unable to or refuse to claim unemployment benefits, so they're there when they aren't working at all, right? It doesn't make sense for those who don't claim them because where they can, because a lot of times then they won't have the benefits when they really need them when they don't have work. Numbers on prices are likely, in fact almost definitely, equally skewed. But there's another faulty government statistic I wanted to take a moment to discuss today. That would be the numbers on wage increases, and I should say really on the changes in wages, though they really only talk about the increases, which is why I chose increase. Part of the reason I chose increases as part of my subject today. There are a couple of major problems with these numbers. The first is obvious. Unless you couple them to prices, understanding what they really mean, even if either set of numbers is actually real, and neither is as far as I can tell, it's not really possible. You can't really tell what it means for wages to increase. Even then, they're going to be inaccurate at best because different people will or even must buy different products. So their buying power is going to be linked to what products they will or won't buy in a given period of time. The other concern, though, is that one that most common folks, recognize, but that people who are relatively well off probably often fail to see. And yes, that does include politicians. That would be that wage numbers are general. Put another way, just because people as a whole seem to be seeing increases or decreases in wages doesn't mean that specific individuals do. By way of example, pretty much every time I've heard that wages are increasing as a general thing, my paycheck has at best been static. It's stayed the same. What that often actually means is my wages buy less stuff. Why? Because if wages are generally increasing, so are prices. So even though my paycheck is staying the same in the raw dollar amount, if it's not going up with the population at large, what I make is actually losing value. My dollar that bought me a loaf of bread yesterday is not sufficient to do so today. What I'm trying to get across in all that I'm saying is this. You should pretty much never assume government statistical data is good. If that's not because they diddle the numbers in order to make themselves look better, as I said earlier on when I started out, it will be a result of the fact that their numbers can only be so correct. So it is with wage numbers from the government's perspective. And I know you folks out there know that as well as I do, even if only intuitively. A lot of you know it, in a real and meaningful kind of way. But if nothing else, I'm sure you recognize it intuitively. Wage increase and decrease numbers are not real. It's that simple. It's that simple. I'm going to say this again. I can't speak for anybody else, though I bet if I did, I would be pretty correct in what I said. And that would be this. Most people who hold a job, hold a job, if they're lucky, they see some sort of cost of living increase in the course of time in that job. Mostly that only happens for government, and nobody else does that. If prices go up, too bad, your wages don't. And what that means is for most people, even when they tout the idea that wage increases are occurring, that's not really a meaningful thing, because most of us are out there in a job where we've probably worked for who knows how long. And if we're lucky, we're seeing wage increases on the basis of merit periodically. But we're almost never seeing wage increases on the basis of price increases. And I'm going to say something, and this is going to sound really odd. That's actually a good thing, because if our wages go up, hey, guess what? Prices probably jump again. And that means that our wages basically at best stay the same. So the idea of wage increases being a good thing is not a good one. It's not a great one. The better answer is for prices to go down, whether that's by increases in efficiency by those making and doing things, whether it's by people willing to be able to take a little bit of hit on their pay when they're making really good money, whatever it happens to be. The point is, wage increases, it's not really a great thing to begin with. But the fact is, and this is what I'm trying to get across today, let's say that wage increases are always a beneficial thing, and they're not. I'll just tell you that now, they're not. But let's say that they were. When the government reports wage increases, the majority of people out there are not getting those increases. Or if they are, they're not getting them to make it so that they stay up on how much things cost. That's not how that works, okay? So this idea that government numbers on the increase in wages are good, solid, reasonable numbers to begin with. Again, they're almost certainly using, so I forget which number it was, inflation numbers, where they have these U numbers that they use to talk about that, or gross domestic product. I don't remember, but they have these numbers. And they literally recently switched from one number to another because the number that they switched to looked better, sounded better than the number that they were using. You can bet the same thing happens with wage increases and similar. I'm going to say it again. Politicians are out to keep themselves in positions that they're currently in. Whether it's to keep themselves in power is beside the point. They want to keep a job. They want to have a job. And they don't want to have to go looking for a job when they're done being politicians. And unfortunately, in most places, it's possible to be a politician for a very long time. Now, there are other problems with the political structure that I think are pretty important, like that there are people who are essentially bureaucrats who are around the politicians and who do most of the work most of the time so that the politicians are free to gab and supposedly write law and so forth. But all of that aside, my point is this. Those wage numbers that they give you, the numbers that say, oh, wages are increasing, that's not, first of all, that's not necessarily a good thing. But second of all, and more importantly, it's not really valid necessarily either. Okay? They're going to give you a number because they want you to say that. I was watching a show yesterday, and sometime, I think it was yesterday, because of course I never watch TV, and it was actually a couple days ago. But anyway, where and I'm not going to get into the show where the crowd booed the fact that they were told they didn't pay taxes. But if you actually took those people and sat them down and showed them what they, quote, paid in taxes and then what they got back at the end of the year, they would realize that for the majority of people, that's actually correct. That's actually true. People like to hear People hear numbers that sound good and they like to parrot those numbers, but most people know better, and that's true for wage increases as much as just about anything else that you can imagine. All right, I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Sunday, the 17th of April of 2022. That would be Easter for those of you who celebrate that. I believe we're also doing the Passover today, as I recall. If you observe that Passover, I hope that things are going well for you in that regard. It is also the beginning of the Christian week, according to what most of us Christians believe. Tomorrow then will be Monday, the beginning for a lot of folks of that work week. Monday, April the 18th of 2022, to be more specific. I think it's also the tax drop dead date this year, instead of it being the 15th. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page, on kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on minds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group there, and that would be MINDS Minds, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you might be picking me up today. The subject for today has been wage increases, and I forgot to put my subject for tomorrow, so let me take a look. I think it's similar to one that I did recently, if I recall correctly. It is taking my time as opposed to eating my time, and I want to talk about this idea that it's always a choice what you do, which I think is correct, but I want to point some things out about that I think a lot of people are not taking into consideration when you say you make that choice on a daily and ongoing basis. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully we will see you again on Monday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was created on Sunday, the 17th of April of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching today's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to check out the next one. Remember, on various platforms, primarily Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub, and the audio podcast, you can subscribe to my content. For the audio podcast, you probably want to use Apple, Google, or Spotify. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. In order to find me on those platforms, you can go to the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub. You can also get to my content on Facebook by finding the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. Minds, MINDS.com, where you will find me at the Kurt's Religion and Politics group, and Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com as well. You can look there. I post my daily video on various social media sites, really only about 3, Parler, Gab, and Twitter at present. I am at KP Schubert on each of them, and you can find me under them, and you can find the videos under me. You should be able to find my podcasts on Google and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's also on podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. If you're looking for me on various of the podcast sites, you probably want to search Kurt's Religion and Politics, not the Daily Summation. Keep in mind, you can subscribe to my content on various places that I put it. All constructive feedback is welcome. You can like, dislike, add a rumble, or give whatever feedback is available on any of the platforms that you can do such things. You can also add a comment on what I put there. Unless you're advertising or doing something that I believe will harm others, I'll leave your comments out there even if I don't agree with or understand them. I will try to let you know I've seen them when possible and may reply if I feel it's reasonable, appropriate, and possible, of course. Thanks again for viewing this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back again for tomorrow's as well.